Imagine cutting your takeoff time by 50%, never missing a measurement, and even training your team to handle this without you. I've helped countless contractors do exactly this, and here's the blueprint to mastering your takeoffs once and for all. The first thing I'm going to be talking about is starting with digital takeoff software. If you've never used takeoff software before, I know this can be a little bit of a daunting task. It's something new. You're probably used to getting out, either doing just manual sort of takeoffs off a computer screen or getting the actual blueprints, which may be faster at first because it's what you're used to. You can run with it, but utilizing digital takeoff software is very important. It will speed up your estimating process. It'll also pave the way for future growth with being able to delegate and hand this off to someone and have those checks and balances in place. There's a lot of benefits to using digital takeoff software. So you need to get through that habit change and just realize there's going to be some uncomfortableness and it's going to take a while to master it and get used to the specific ways the software works, but in the long run it's going to be highly beneficial to you. So my recommendations as far as specific softwares is, if you are using a project management software that already has takeoff software included with it, like a Build Exact or a Job Tread, then use that takeoff software because it's going to integrate with your other software that you're already using. If you're looking for like a standalone option, then I would recommend checking out PlanSwift or Bluebeam. Both are excellent takeoff software. All right, so the second point I'm going to be talking about here is loading your actual plans and how to organize them inside your takeoff software. I'm using Build Exact here. Any takeoff software is going to function similarly. This one is pretty straightforward and streamlined, which is what I like about it. So essentially, you're going to load in your plans. Typically, this will be a PDF file or it may come from some sort of, other design type file. You load it in. What you want to do right off the bat is make sure you're naming all the different pages. So you can see on the side here, we've got your elevation, foundation, first floor, second floor, wall elevation. So name every page, because when you're jumping around and doing your takeoffs, you're going to want to just see where everything is, keep it organized. The other thing that you need to do right off the bat is make sure you're scaling the document. So most pages are going to have a scale like this one, 1/4 inches is 1 foot. So you can typically do that manual. There is auto scaling as well, where they can usually pick that up. So depending on the software you use, but you're going to want to make sure you scale it, because if it's not scaled correctly, your measurements are all going to be garbage more or less. So this will be one of the first steps to just getting things set up. All right, point number 3 here is the takeoff types. There's different types of takeoffs that you can do, and what's good use cases for that. The rest of this video, I'm going to be going over some specifics right now, and then we're going to get into how to make this quicker, some tips and tricks, best practices, as well as how to delegate this to your team and some knowledge around that. So stay tuned. Right now, though, for the different types, typically you're going to have a lineal measurement. This could be something like gutters is a typical one, maybe length of a wall, things like that. Then you have area measurements. Area measurements could be square footage for flooring. It could be square footage for walls and things like that. Siding would be another one where you need an area. And then if you've got cubic yards, volume essentially. So volume could be things like you'd use it for site work, where you need to know volume of fill for a project. Concrete's a common one. How much cubic yards of concrete are you going to need? And then finally, the last one is the count. So how many pot lights are you going to need in the house? How many doors are there? So just individual counts of separate things. So I'm going to keep this really simple for time's sake, but the first one we'll look at is lineal. So this will just be a line, and I'm going to we'll put band, we'll add a measurement here. So you can also search through everything, add a measurement, we'll say band, board, and you'll have different measurement types. Wait for it to load there, depending on what you're doing, right? So again, every program is going to be a little bit different, but is this a measure? Is this a count for each? Is it, lineal foot, square foot, whatever? So in this case, we're going to be doing lineal foot. I want to know how long, this side of the house is for that band word. So I click on one side and click on the other, and it creates a line. We've got, just over 30 feet here. So that'd be, again, lines could be used for a whole number of different things. Typically walls, gutters, that kind of stuff is most typical for that. Let's say we want to know how much siding are we working with here, and we can see that there's there's kind of board siding, and then there's more of a shake siding or whatever, different type of siding up top here. So let's say I want to get this top measurement for siding. That's going to be polygon, and so I'd add measurement, could do siding, and now I want a square footage takeoff. So I would simply get my square footage, bring it across, and there we go. So now we got our square footage. In this case, with Build Exact, you've got to finish where you start, and that kind of clicks it. Some programs you can press escape, you can press enter or spacebar, they'll do kind of different things. So here we've got our siding, 366 square feet of siding here. Now, let's say we want to know what's the actual siding without the window. Typically, when I'm doing takeoffs for something like siding, I will just use the full measurement because there's always going to be some waste. And whenever you're doing takeoffs and making your estimate, you always want to be accounting that even let's say this is 366 feet of siding, I'm going to want to add 10% or more to that for waste and things like that. Let's say you've got really large windows where like most of this is windows. What you can do is draw a deduction. So let's take out this window here. So now we've removed the window and we're at 339 square feet. We could do the other ones too. Again, I would probably just for time and energy and considering that you always want a bit of extra material anyways, I typically wouldn't, take off windows unless they're pretty large and doors and stuff like that. But you do you, and however accurate you want to be. Some people will want a very accurate takeoff and then they always know that they need to add more later. It's sort of up to you and how you want to run that. So that's how you do an area. Something like a volume, we'll go over to the foundation plan here. So it looks like we've got a footing, but let's say we needed some piles for this just to kind of make things a little easier. And so we'll add another measurement here, concrete piles. Another thing is like I'm just throwing names in here, but when you are actually naming your takeoffs, the way that I like to keep it organized is always start your takeoffs by what it is. So if you have 3 different types of siding, do siding hardywood, siding stucco, siding cedar shakes, whatever it may be. And that way all the siding will kind of line up if it's alphabetical. Same with concrete. So concrete piles, concrete footings, concrete slabs. I like to start the name of the thing with kind of like the section, if you will, like framing, framing that, because it'll categorize it alphabetically and keep it more organized. All right, so we got concrete piles. This is going to be cubic yards. We're going to do that. And let's say we've got, a number of, and I'm going to do a rectangle. I forgot the depth. So of course you need to know how deep is this, volume that you're doing. So let's say these piles are going to be 2.5 feet and we've got one in every corner. Of course, on the plan, it would show the actual pile. I'm just kind of pulling this out and doing what kind of looks like a square. But let's say we've got a number of piles, wherever they may be, and we can see that, I'm still on the deduction here. So because I'm on the deduction tool, it didn't count it. But as you can see, let's say we've got some massive piles here. Have a little fun with it. So we got 20 cubic yards, essentially. Now, with all of these takeoffs, what you want to be thinking is, yes, you need it for the estimate, but later you want it to be at a level where you can use this for your material counts as well. So let's say you win the project, now you've got to go order concrete for your piles that you're going to be pouring, next week or what have you. You can go to your takeoff and you can get that material estimate straight from your takeoff and it's accurate. So something to keep in mind when you're going through this. It might feel good just to kind of rush through it because I just need some numbers to put in the estimate to get over to the client. But if you do it too quickly, you kind of defeats the purpose of being able to use it later. So next up, we're going to get a count. We'll go to the first floor here, zoom in. Let's say that we wanted a count. So let's put in here, pendant, add a measurement. There we go. And again, I'm throwing this in here. Really, this should be like lighting pendants or electrical pendant lighting, something like that to keep everything categorized. I'm just doing this quick. So we're going to do each. So click each and, we can see we've got 4 pendants here. And I haven't looked at these plans. These are just some generic plans that we picked up. But you can see what happens. We got 4 each. If you could be measuring swing doors. So maybe you want the amount of swing doors. So you do, in this case, you just click on all the swing doors and you could get a count of the amount of doors that you're putting in. So count's really useful and quick for things like that. The great thing about doing digital takeoffs as well is somebody else can do this for you. You can jump in and quickly take a look at it, and you can always refer back to it later. Let's say through the estimating, you realize you missed something. I've had this happen where we were into a project. I was getting, put some bids out for tender to a drywall contractor. Their number came in quite a bit higher than what I had originally budgeted. And I found out later that I had made a mistake doing a takeoff. I had to include the ceiling for the drywall. So it does happen. And that's why this is so important, because you can really pinpoint, I made that mistake, I shouldn't do that again. All right, some other kind of special cases that may come up is doing pitches of roofs or roofs, depending on what you call them. So we will add roof, and typically you're going to be getting square footage for a roof. Here we've got our pitch. So again, your software, you may have to find out where that pitch is, but let's say we've got a 612 pitch here, and we're going to then figure out, how much, let's say we're replacing shingles on this one side of the building, or what have you. So we can see that we got 130 square feet for this part of the building. So pitches are great for that. You could have slopes as well. If you're doing like, a slab, like garage slab, you're going to have a bit of a slope, things like that. You need to figure out those kind of things. You can change the pitch of it. Another good thing, especially once you get like a lot of different measurements on one, page of the plans, it'll get really kind of colorful and a lot of stuff happening. So you can always turn off the view to hide things. So in this case, I can turn that off. Let's say I don't need to see that anymore, and I'll go to somewhere else. So you can always turn things on and off and change the color typically. So keep things color coded. I like to have similar colors for similar things, whatever makes sense to you, but color coding just helps to quickly visualize. And if you can stay consistent across your plans that these types of colors are typically for these types of things, it makes it just a lot easier. And especially when you're passing this off to somebody else. Other things to mention is that, there's a Building Stack here, they have Blue, which is a takeoff assistant AI for estimating. There are more and more AI estimating solutions. I feel it's still kind of early for a lot of them. They are helpful, but just the way things are going and how fast it's changing, within 6 months, a year, 2 years, it's just a matter of time before you can really probably just kind of plug and play and drop in a set of plans, and an AI assistant will just from your historical, way that you've done takeoffs before, be able to automatically do takeoffs and even a lot of the estimating for you. So that'll be a great day for everybody. Until then, test them out, use it. Don't be afraid to try AI tools and give it a go. See if it's at a level that will be helpful for you. If not, wait till it gets better, but really it's a matter of just using it and getting familiar with it. All right, moving on to point number 5, the one everyone wants to know, how they can go quicker with doing takeoffs. So the first thing is make sure that you're following a template. So have a template for your estimate with all the different line items and have it in chronological order. That's the way I like to organize it. And then just follow your template and do takeoffs as you get to the different items in your template. So when you get the foundation, you're going to go do your foundation takeoffs and figure all that out. Then when you get to your framing, you're going to go and get framing takeoffs. So I like to go in sequential order like that, chronologically, instead of just jumping into a set of plans and like trying to do a whole bunch of different takeoffs all in one shot. I prefer to go through, a template. So that'll make things a lot easier. The other thing is using standard items in assembly. So again, depending on the software you're using, you should be able to set up some sort of standard templates, items, assemblies, things like that. So things like an exterior wall. Well, you're going to need, bottom plate, studs, nails, maybe some sill gasket, OSB or plywood sheeting, insulation, poly, whatever it may be, right? So creating an assembly, instead of having to price all that stuff separately or do a takeoff for all that separately, you can then have just a standard item. Other things could be like footings. If you know that footings always, you're going to need this kind of stuff for them, then you can just kind of click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instead of having to kind of draw out each one, stuff like that, right? So the more standard kind of items that you can just plug and play and pull over, the faster it's going to go for you. Other things is duplicating takeoffs. So let's say that you've already done all your lineal foot calculations for the amount of interior and exterior walls you have. Well, you're going to need the same exact calculation essentially for baseboards. You just got to make sure that your interior walls are double-sided. So you're probably going to need baseboards for both sides, whereas exterior walls, you just need one. But you can reuse those calculations. You can just reuse the numbers. And of course, that'll be faster. What I would suggest, though, is duplicate the actual takeoff, so that you just rename it to, instead of, interior wall, you rename it to baseboards and just like double-sided or something like that, or you double the measurement. And that way you've got separate takeoff items and it'll help you with your material estimating later. Other common ones that you can duplicate are insulation and drywall. Typically, those are going to be similar for exterior walls or ceilings when it's above a roof and things like that. All right, so now I'm moving on to number 6 is how do you never do another takeoff ever again? And the first step is, doing the first 1 to 5 there and getting your system and getting trained on it, understanding it. The next thing is creating a document where you're just documenting what the process is and you go through for doing takeoffs. It doesn't have to be super built out. You can even put a copy of this video, a link to this video, go watch this video as part of your SOP document that you're going to create and just kind of go through the different things, loading a set of plans. This is how you do it. Doing takeoffs, go through the template, and this is how you do a lineal. This is how you do an area. This is how you do takeoffs for concrete or framing or whatever. And yes, it takes a bit of time to set up. If you need help with this, reach out to us. Check out the links in the description below. We've got, templates, estimating templates, as well as ways to connect with us. If you just want done for you, we'll get this stuff in place for you kind of service. Essentially, once you have that SOP though, then you do a screen share. So Zoom, Google Meet, whatever you want to use, do a screen share and just walk through you doing an estimate. So you're going to have to do a takeoff for an estimate anyways to, estimate jobs that you're working on. So when you have a good example of doing a new home build or a larger commercial project or whatever it may be, record your screen, talk through it, show yourself loading the plans, doing the takeoffs, and just talking through how to do it and create that as a training video for your company. Now you're in a place where you can give someone the SOP, you can have them watch the training video, and they can now run with this and you can get this off your plate. They can do it, you review it, and you've just saved yourself a ton of time and frustration and wasted evenings and weekends estimating and doing takeoffs by delegating and passing this off and leading your company. So now that you can do quick, accurate takeoffs, check out this next video. It's all in the Estimating Mastery series, a series of videos. It's on proper pricing, how to price your jobs with accuracy, as well as making sure you're getting good profit when you're actually at the end of the day selling this to the client.